Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Boobies and Newbies. You can follow us at Boobies Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd like to support the podcast and get a little extra bonus Boobies content every month, you can support us on Patreon at Boobies Podcast. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today I'm joined by Spoonie, author, entrepreneur, podcaster, self-care advocate, and fellow Kelly Nerdzilla Mendenhall from A Non-Mom Happy Hour. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi. It's funny to have two Kellys on the same show.
I know. I'm loving it. I feel like when I was growing up, there were so many Kellys, and there'd be like Kelly R, Kelly L, or like they'd distinguish you between how you spelled your Kelly, like, oh, that's Kelly with a Y, or that's Kelly IE, you know? So, I mean, but now I don't have enough Kellys in my life, so I'm glad you're here.
I have to say that, like, you nailed it with that intro. That seemed seamless. I feel like I would have tripped all over that, and it made me sound so important.
Well,
and,
you
like,
do so many things.
I do, and that was an accident. I didn't plan it that way. So for anybody who thinks I had some kind of blueprint that I followed or roadmap, that's not the case. I am a recovering nonprofit professional is how I usually refer to myself.
I like that.
Well, anybody who works in nonprofit can or knows much about the nonprofit world can probably relate to that or understand it pretty well. But yeah, so I was a nonprofit professional and have a master's degree and studied all the things. And in June 2017, I suddenly became a spine rehab chronic pain patient in ways that I never expected or anticipated. My whole life was turned upside down in a very short amount of time. And I'm not good at sitting still.
You and me both.
Which I think is why the universe was like, oh, okay, heifer, you're not going to listen to the hints and the clues that we've been giving you. How about we lay you flat on your back for 10 months and you figure life out?
That's not stopping you. That's not stopping Kelly.
It didn't. I started doing a virtual skincare business online, which is super easy because you can do it from your phone laying on your back, which is what I did for 10 months.
Perfect.
And then I started writing my first book and getting that ready for publication and started freelance writing as a journalist. And I have a blog and all these different things. And then, started the podcast. And that was all born out of meeting somebody who became like my best friend in a Facebook group.
Yeah, I love that. I've listened to the show and I feel like I didn't realize that was how you two came to be. Like, you would need to tell us. We'll talk about your book too. And I think, by the way, that you need to write another book that's titled All the Things You Can Do While Laying on Your Back. But
I probably should.
I mean, it can be the follow-up. But before we talk about the book, I think we need to hear a little bit about A Non-Mom Happy Hour and how this beautiful friendship was born.
Well, okay, so our tagline is that we are the podcast that celebrates real ass human women, whether they use their baby box or not.
Love.
And that was literally as I was creating our podcast or Podbean hosting page. I was like, what should our tagline be? And we were in Facebook Messenger and I just spit that out and she's like, that's perfect. Debbie Jo's kind of life motto is be a real ass human. And so we were always saying that. And so that's why it is worded the way it is. But basically, Debbie Jo and I are both in network marketing. We both come from a background of working in nonprofits and social work settings, but from different viewpoints. Like, I was on the administrative side and she was on the programming side, and we both got into network marketing because we weren't satisfied with our nonprofit careers and overwhelmed by the student loan debt we had laid out in front of us that
Oh,
we
hashtag life. God.
Right. Yeah. So we met. She started her business almost a year after I started mine. She's in hair care, I'm in skincare, but we both ended up in this mastermind marketing group for a company called Nerdy Girl. And we just happened to comment on the same thread. And then I went and like stalked her profile real quick because she said something about being from Michigan, or I can't remember. But anyway, so I I came back to the thread and I was like, I just stalked your profile a little bit. We need to be friends. And she was like, that was so perfect because that's what I would have said. So,
oh, it was a digital meet cute, like meet cute for 2017.
It really was. It was it was December of 2017, and we just started talking, and it was such a terrible time for me in my life to be making new relationships like this because I was so consumed by all the meds that I was on and the pain that I was in and everything.
Right.
But she could work with that, and like, she wasn't like running away from me when I'd be like, I'm so out of it. I don't even know what we talked about yesterday. So we became friends and we started doing a weekly Facebook live series. And it was we would just talk about marketing and mindset and how to be a network marketer without being skeezy or spammy or doing all the things that everybody hates about network marketing, right?
Right.
So we joked. I started jokingly referring to us as the two non-moms, which reminded me of the band Four Non-Blondes.
Nice.
Because network marketing has so many moms in it. And so every time we would get into a training or a workshop or a group or something, we'd be really vibing with it and like getting so much out of it. And then it never failed that it would end up shifting focus to like mom life and being a mompreneur or,
right.
A mom boss and all these different things. And we were just like, we feel so left out. And now we're not connecting.
Right.
So when we started doing that Facebook Live series, people were like, you guys need to do a podcast. And we were like, okay. And then eventually, and like within a couple months, we started doing it. We've been flying by the seat of our pants the whole time and learning as we go. But that's how it started. And yeah, it was a total like online, whatever the equivalent of a bromance is for women, that was us.
Yeah, for real. Where is the term for that?
I don't know.
Romance. What is it for women? Friendship? Like
romance? I don't know. Like it
romance.
doesn't. Yeah. I mean,
like
that might need to be a new hashtag, but
yeah. Hashtag womance. Now, is it womance like women romance, or is it womance like whoa romance?
I was thinking more like women romance. But
I don't know. I kind of like the
either.
whoa.
It could really be either. It could go either way.
That's exciting. And you both met in person for the first time recently, right?
Yeah, in April. I went home for 2 weeks. It was the first time I'd been able to make a trip home in 5 years because of my health stuff.
Right.
I got turned into a cyborg in December and got a spine cord implant. And so I decided, I was going to try and travel home and see how it went. And so Debbie was able to come down and spend the day at my mom's house. It was, I think, like an hour and a half drive for her and her boyfriend, Josh. They lived together, and they came down and hung out. And it was honestly like, so Debbie Jo has way more anxiety than I do about certain social things.
Okay.
I didn't realize how scared she was that I'd been basically catfishing her for a year.
Oh my gosh.
She was like, I know it's stupid because we see each other online constantly and we spend hours and hours video chatting a week between recording the podcast and doing Patreon. She was like, but I'm so anxious.
Right.
But once they walked in the door, it was literally like they had always been part of the family or, been around hanging out with my family. And uh, a bunch of it was my parents, my stepbrother and his daughter, Debbie Jo and Josh, and my Aunt Judy. And we all had dinner together and everything. And it was, I mean, it was literally like they just fit in seamlessly. Like they'd always been around. And my stepdad was making Josh Dutch food. So there's a thing called hagelslag, which
Love
is
the name.
I know. It sounds terrible. It's actually delicious. It's chocolate sprinkles on buttered toast.
Oh my God. I mean, how does it get better than that?
I know. I know. It's actually a really traditional Dutch breakfast, and my stepdad is Dutch. Um, so he was like making Josh hagelslag, and like it was hilarious. So yeah, we just finally met in April, and people went bananas to finally see us together for the first time.
Yeah, it's
So
like they were shipping you both. Like,
yeah,
oh, the romance, the womance we've all been listening to is
yeah,
real.
yeah, yeah.
I
It was
love
really
it.
cool, and our smiles were like, I mean, they our faces probably hurt the next day. We were smiling
Right.
so big, you could tell we were really happy to finally be hanging out. So yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I love that. Well, and you both, I mean, so the podcast has been going for what, over a year now, right?
No, actually, in July it'll be a year. So we've only actually had 40 episodes, and it seems
Okay.
it seems like
I was gonna say it feels like so much more.
I know. And I mean, we cover a lot of ground in our episodes, and our episodes are long for those of you who are like, can these bitches shut up? We can't. That's the thing.
I mean, deal with it. Like
Yeah.
if you listen, you get
My,
it.
I mean, a lot of people will listen like when they're commuting or,
That's
cleaning or
me.
on the treadmill or whatever. And that's what I do to listen to all my podcasts that I listen to.
Those are literally the three things that I do. I clean, I like go to the gym occasionally, and I commute too often.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we're on the longer side, but and so we've covered a lot of ground, but it really does feel like we've been doing it for longer than I
Yeah.
mean, it'll be a year in July and I it seems like it's already been a couple of years or something.
Well, in fact, no, I'm with you. My year anniversary will be July of when we launched our first episode. So happy anniversary to
No
us.
kidding. That's awesome. I didn't realize we'd started so close to the same time.
Yeah, me neither. No, that's awesome. I love that. And you both will have a celebration in June or end of May, June, when you head to PodX in Nashville.
Yeah, so she's actually going to come for a whole week too. So we'll get a whole week together
Awesome.
and so we'll get lots and lots of pictures together because it sucks to be two people who are on a podcast and you can't have a lot of pictures of you together. So we're really excited to get to spend a whole week together, but from May 31st to June 2nd is the PodX in Nashville. It looks like it's going to be a really cool conference. They've done it in Boston and New York. This is the first year that they're doing it in Nashville.
Yeah.
And we perform live for the first time ever on June 2nd as
That's
part of PodX.
exciting. That's so
It is.
exciting.
So if anybody listening is in the Middle Tennessee area or close enough to Nashville that you would be interested in coming to PodX, if you go to podx.com/happy, you can save 10% on your ticket cost.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I
Yeah.
could be there. I have a bridal shower that weekend because, June is the month of marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I would totally be there. I'm hoping to be there next year. I hope it'll be in Nashville again next year. That'd be fantastic.
I think it will be. I mean, Nashville is Music City, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, music, podcasting, all these different things, they're all connected in different ways. And I think that I think that they'll keep doing it for a couple of years or, ongoing, because the Music City Convention Center where it's being held is this like billions of dollars project
Mm.
that just got built a couple of years ago, and it's gorgeous, and it's connected to the Omni Hotel, which has like Johnny Cash and Hank Williams suits on display
Which
and
I would
in
totally go see because I've
yeah,
never been to Nashville. And so
yeah.
it would be like tourist city for me.
Yeah, so it's and I think Debbie Joe's gonna I think it'll be a good tourist experience for her too. And
Yeah.
we're staying, because it's difficult for me to drive back and forth in the car a lot. We're staying with friends of mine, Toby and Al, who used to do Airbnb. So they have 2 guest rooms in their
Oh,
house.
fantastic.
And they were like, yeah, you can just crash with us. Like, don't even worry about it. So,
Sleepover.
right? So, and they have a hot tub, and like, I mean, they're
Oh,
all kinds of glamorous over there. So we're really excited about it. And Honesty Check, Adina and Sonia from Honesty Check
oh,
will be
love them.
there.
Love
I
them.
know.
I was just
Me
listening to
too.
them yesterday at the gym.
They make me cackle laugh like
Yes.
out loud in public, and it's
Yes.
so embarrassing, but I love it. And they're going to be there, and Steve Goff from Political Thoughts with Steve is going to be there. And I think maybe Jen from our true crime podcast might
Oh,
try and
cool.
come
Okay,
just
so
for
quite
the
the
one day.
group.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we're the only ones performing live, so I expect heckling from
Yes.
Adina and Sonia.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. This is the kind of friendship that I like aspire to have with people. It's I really need you to be there and heckle. I really need you to come and heckle me. Please, please heckle. Like that's great.
Yeah.
Those are goals. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Well, that's exciting. Congrats on almost 1 year anniversary. Congrats
Thank
on
you. You
PodX.
too.
Thank you. And I mean, if we need one more thing to celebrate, hello, you have a book coming out because you're not busy enough.
I know. People are like, how do you do all this? And I'm like, I don't know, 15 minutes at a time, honestly, because
No, I love that. I really should think about things more that way. That's a good motto to go with.
well, seriously, because I can only sit upright for about 3 hours a day total before my pain starts to spike.
Mm,
Even with the implant, I can make it usually 4 hours a day with my implant before it gets too bad. But so I really do. I just fit stuff into the nooks and crannies of like when I'm awake enough or not at I have a really busy rehab schedule, so
right.
if I'm not doing one of my rehab workouts, which is like 4 to 5 days a week, or at the chiropractor, or you know, whatever doctor's appointments or anything,
Sure.
I'm I'm at home, but balancing between, okay, I need to sit up to do this task, so I'll do that for a little while and then I'll do this stuff. Most of the stuff I can lay down and do. And so I wrote the book, and it was I think it was divine inspiration, because at the time that I had the idea for it, I was at the very worst part of my health crisis. And I was in this phase of like, I was in 10 out of 10 pain, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the doctors weren't believing me. They were accusing me of not wanting to work or of drug seeking, or even though I wouldn't take narcotics or opioids, they were accusing me of drug seeking. And then if I said I didn't want that stuff, then they'd say, oh, well, then it can't really be hurting that bad.
Mm,
And so I was in the fight of my life, quite literally. I mean,
yeah.
it was bad. And so I started thinking to myself one night, and I was just like, God, I don't even know if you can hear me, but like, I need a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not going to make it out of this alive, because it triggered my PTSD and major depressive disorder. And so I was having suicidal ideations for like, I mean, every day for about 6 or 8 months.
Mm.
And I was just like, I need something, because I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel hopeless and helpless, and I need something. And literally the next night, I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner.
As we are when all the best ideas come to us.
Yes, right? I'm on the couch, quite honestly, stoned out of my mind on gabapentin, which is a nerve blocker. And I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and all of a sudden I look up and Nathan is sitting across the room. And I said, I'm going to write a book. And he was like, huh? And I said, it's going to be an autobiography, and it's going to be called The Stories My Tattoos Tell. And he was like, okay. And then,
so
we
supportive, so supportive.
He was just like,
I love it.
He probably thought I was in a drug haze at the time,
right?
Because back then, I mean, I was on so many medications for the nerve blocks. I mean, I really was losing. I was losing my mind. I didn't know who I was half the time, and I was really out of it. So he probably thought I was in like some kind of drug-induced haze and wouldn't remember the next day. So he was just like, okay. And then the next day I woke up and started writing.
Yeah. Skin in the Game, The Stories My Tattoos Tell, is coming out. You wrote it.
It is June 1st. I wrote it. It feels like a miracle. I've been dreaming of being an author since I was 8 years old. I begged for a typewriter for my first birthday, but like for so long, or for my 8th birthday rather, but like for so long, I was stuck in survival mode and doing all the things I thought I was quote unquote supposed to be doing to build a good life, that I kind of lost sight of all of my dreams from when I was a kid. And so it's literally a dream coming true. I mean, I was so into writing when I was a kid that like when I started taking home ec and stuff, we had to practice our signature for writing checks and things. Like I'm probably dating myself with the fact that we even still had home ec.
Oh no, we had to do cursive. We didn't have home ec, but we had to do cursive. I mean,
so we had home ec, and part of that was learning how to balance a checkbook and keep a checking account. So we had to practice our signatures. Well, I was already thinking extra. So I was like, no, this is going to be my author signature. Like I'm going to nail this. So yeah, I used to sign my name with an anarchy sign in it. and I still struggle not to do that, because I mean, I did for years and years and years. I always signed my last name with an anarchy sign in it because I grew up a punk rock kid. And I had to get out of the habit when I started writing like letters of recommendation and reference for people, or like cover letters and stuff. So I might bring that back.
I think you should. I'm like, I don't know why you gave it up. I mean, if that was in a letter of recommendation that I asked somebody to write for me, I'd be like, yeah, like, do you see who wrote this letter for me? Hello.
Yeah, I should probably bring that back. I kind of forgot, but now that we're talking about it, I might have to bring that back.
I think you should.
It's very unique. And I remember going to London and using that signature on my credit card receipt, and the guy looking at it, and he'd be like, no one would ever be able to fake your signature.
It's true.
I was like, yeah,
it's very true.
I know.
They need to also bring back home ec, because
yes.
I like balancing a checkbook. Like literally anytime I pay with like a e-check online, I have to double check that I'm putting in the correct routing number versus account number. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, I know it's one of these. God, there's so many things. Well,
I'm like, who's gonna write books in the next, like, after we're dead? Who's gonna write books anymore? Because have you seen the children writing these days? They all write in freaking text speak.
Yeah.
Like, my stepdad is a professor, and so he's shown me papers, and I'm just like,
yeah,
what?
My mom's a 6th grade teacher, and occasionally when I go home, I'll substitute teach while I'm there. And so I'll sub for her kids. And the things that they say and do and like words that come out of their mouths, it makes me very concerned for the future.
I know. I'm like the old lady yelling at the kids to get off her lawn, but I mean, I can't help it.
I identify more with that role now than I do with the kids on the lawn.
I know.
I'm there. Well, okay, I have to ask about the book, The Stories My Tattoos Tell. I mean, I need to hear about some of your tattoos. Like not a ton. I don't want you to give away, the whole book and everything, but I guess why tattoos? Like why do you love them so much?
Well, I started being really into the tattoo subculture and tattoo as an art form when I was 16 and I met my friend Joey, whose parents owned a tattoo shop, and he was apprenticing at the tattoo shop. He was also super fucking hot, and I had a huge crush on him.
I mean, just the fact that he apprenticed at a tattoo shop would be like enough for me.
We ended up like brother and sister, but at first it was totally a crush, like big time. So I started hanging out at the shop just to like hang out and be around him and other friends that I made through the shop and everything. And I had been carrying around a picture in my life and head for 2 years that I knew that I wanted to get tattooed. And it was a picture that my high school boyfriend, I call him Brian with the curly dark hair in the book. He was my boyfriend in high school. I dated him when I was 15, and he'd drawn this character that was a woman who, in his head, she was a woman in like a graphic novel or something. And she had hair like mine, pulled up like mine. She had makeup that was similar to makeup that I would wear. And she was holding her arms out, and in her arm, like she had her hand out. In the palm of her hand, there was a flame floating, and inside the flame was a flower. And I just loved this drawing.
Aww.
I loved it for a lot of reasons. And I loved Brian. He was a really important person in my life. And so when I decided that it was time to get my first tattoo, I was 17, and I relentlessly harassed my mother for a week until she signed the paperwork. And it was that girl that I got tattooed on me, and it was modified a little bit when a tattoo artist works on a tattoo, a lot of times they want to be able to have a certain amount of artistic freedom,
right,
or be able to put their own special touches in it. So he did modify it a little bit, but that was my first tattoo. And I just kept coming up with more ideas for tattoos that connected to different moments, pivotal moments, or people,
right,
or events in my life. And so, after that, I got a memorial tattoo for my dad on my back. And then it just, every time I had an idea for a tattoo, it was connected to something significant about my life. And so I've always kind of said, my tattoos tell my life story if you know how to read them.
Okay, I love that.
And I think that's where the idea for the book was really, I think it was that little seed that it grew out of, because I had actually presented as a topic telling my life story through my tattoos for Rotary Club. Of
course.
When I was in my mid-20s, I became a member of a Rotary Club in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they were really pushing diversity. They had this like diversity initiative where they were trying to get more women, more young people, more diverse, not just old white dudes.
Which the Rotary Club could use less of. So.
Right. Exactly. And so I had a person recruit me, a woman named Laura, recruited me. And I love Rotary because my grandfather's a polio survivor. So I'm a huge fan of the work that they do with the polio vaccine and everything. And they had a panel. They were having a panel of young new members where they wanted them to speak about why they were in Rotary and all this different stuff. And through that, another club approached me and said, "Would you ever come and talk to us about your tattoos?" And just kind of like to show or demonstrate that people with tattoos maybe are not the stereotypes that we tend to get attached to
Yeah,
us.
insert word here for sure.
And so I did that, and so I kind of always just kept saying that when people would ask about my tattoos, I'd say, well, they tell my life story if you know how to read them. And that's what I do. Is my autobiography is different in that it's not like a traditional timeline. Like, I don't start when I'm born and then go on through the rest of my life.
Right.
I kind of went in the order of which I got the tattoos, and then I would tell the story through telling about why I got the tattoos and everything. I tell
Sure.
the story of the life event. So my first tattoo, I will tell you guys that there is a Beyonce connection in the story behind my first tattoo.
Okay.
Uh,
No more spoilers. We'll leave it at that.
And so, yeah, that's chapter 1. So you guys should definitely check out the book. And it's on Amazon right now for pre-sale. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble for pre-sale in paperback and ebook.
Yay.
And eventually I'll be releasing an audiobook this year as well. So, yeah.
I'm excited. Well, I can't wait to read it. I'm definitely going to have to pre-order a copy. If nothing else, I love this whole idea. I don't think that every person who gets tattoos gets them for a specific reason or a specific
No.
story. And it's like you said, it's art. I mean, it really is an art form, which I appreciate so immensely. I only have 2, but I love the art, and I definitely understand the draw and appeal of getting more.
Yeah, they say it's an addiction, and to me it really is. I feel closure because a lot of my tattoos, I get to memorialize someone that I've loved and lost, or like I said, a significant person or event or time in my life.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they provide me with a lot of closure. It's also very therapeutic for me as a person with CPTSD. I have a lot of anxious energy that I'm carrying around all the time. So when I was just telling Debbie Joe this the other day, because she only has 1 tattoo and it took like 10 minutes. It's very small. And I was like, dude, if you want a stress release, like, hop in a tattoo chair for 2 or 3 hours and bang it out and get a big tattoo, and you burn off so much adrenaline and so much of that nervous, anxious energy.
And you know
it's
what?
like,
I'd prefer to do that than like go for a run. So
yeah.
I'm down with that. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's a stress reliever for me. I always say if I can get at least 1 tattoo a year, I'm a less stabby person. Like, I'm less
There you go.
aggro.
And that's been me so far. Is I did the one in 2017. I did the one in 2018. So now I just got to figure out what's going to be my tattoo this year.
Girl, my wish list never stops growing.
Oh yeah.
Like, I've been carrying around a wish list in my head since I started getting tattoos, and I never run
Yeah, because it just grows and grows. The more life you experience, the more things you fall in love with. Of course you want more. I get it.
Exactly.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Skin in the Game, the stories my tattoos tell is out June 1st. Pre-order it now. We'll see you at Pod X in Nashville. I won't. I wish I could. But
I wish you could.
Will everybody who can't make it to PodX be able to listen to something recorded at PodX?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I guess we'll get the audio within 1 to 2 weeks after we perform.
Cool.
And then it'll go through post-production, and we'll be able to post it the live show. Yeah.
Yay. And then how can anybody who wants to check out Non-Mom Happy Hour find you?
Honestly, our website takes you to literally everything. It'll take
Perfect.
you to our social medias and our Teespring store and everything. So just go to a nonmomhappyhour.com,
Yes.
and that's the easiest way to connect with
What
us.
are you selling on Teespring? Because you gals have the cutest damn logo ever. So I feel like I need some non-mom happy hour in my life.
Yeah, we have coffee cups with our logo, and then underneath it says "Be a real ass human."
Perfect.
We have t-shirts and tank tops that say the same thing and have our logo on them. We're working on our Boop merchandise
Oh
because
my gosh.
for those that haven't heard the show, it started several weeks ago. I don't know. It's been a few months now at this point. Debbie Joe has to give me a boop when we start recording, and so that I know that we start recording. And she thought it would be taken out of the show, but we've left it in.
I like that of all things, it's not like, okay, we're recording. Go. It's boop.
I know. And our fan base has like just really flocked to this. And so
Yeah.
we're working on making merchandise that says boop and boop that shit. At the request of listeners and our producer. So
And I'm thinking that both of you need to add boop tattoos to the list.
that's what I said. And she was like, I'm not getting boop. And I was like, all right.
Somebody else will. Somebody will.
Maybe we'll get the martini glass from our logo or something.
That'd be super cute too. So lots to look forward to. That's okay. So we've talked about you. We've talked about your book.
I know. I'm so sorry.
No, it's so fun.
I feel like we've taken up so much time.
This is so exciting. I feel like I'm doing a whole different podcast right now. So I'm like, oh yeah, I guess we should talk about romance. Like maybe, but
yeah.
No, I'm so excited because half the purpose of doing this show is that I want people who don't normally read romance to read it with me, but also I want to promote other artists and podcasters. So I'm more than happy to spread the word about your podcast, your book, everything. So now that we've done that, what a hardship. We can talk about the book Calling It by Jen Doyle. And this sporty romance was released in April 2016 and is available on Amazon for $2.49 Kindle edition. That's like crazy cheap. What a sweet deal.
Well, what I know now that I'm an author is that you actually get 70%, or no, with Kindle, I think it's 90%.
Oh, wow.
Of the price. So you get a way higher like royalty off of ebooks than you do print books, especially in my case, because I have color photographs of my tattoos throughout my whole book. So it's more expensive to print. So yeah, I think the reason why a lot of authors do that is because they still make a high profit off their Kindle books, and then it helps get people introduced to you for a very inexpensive rate, and then you can read more books.
And that's exactly the kind of reader I am. Is generally I'll buy a Kindle book to read on my tablet or phone, and just because it's so accessible. But I'm a huge fan of paperback too. Like, I mean, I am happy to pick up a book in a bookstore or online or a library sale. Calling It, I actually did read the paperback book because it was featured in my Body Bookworms spring subscription box.
Oh,
I know. Isn't that a great name? Body Bookworm.
It is.
Yeah. So if you haven't checked them out, or anybody listening, if you haven't checked Body Bookworms out, really cool subscription box. They do it seasonally. So there's one 4 times a year. And this was part of the spring box, very baseball season themed. And besides a book, you also get like some fun bedroom toys and accessories and like,
oh snap.
Yeah, like a couple snacks too. I was like, oh my gosh, all my favorite things. So it's really great. This is the second time I've gotten it. And the book was so suited to the season that I was like, well, we should read this. And
Yeah, and it's funny because I told you I grew up in Flint, Michigan, across the street from Jim Abbott. So,
right.
like, it was funny to me that we ended up reading a baseball themed romance.
Serendipitous. Like it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before reading Calling It, had you read or dabbled in reading romance at all before?
Not really. I was trying to think back. My first memory of coming into contact with any kind of romance novel was in my friend Paula's basement in Flint when we were kids. We were like 7 and 8 and 9 years old. And her mom had some erotica and romance novels in the basement. And so Paula and I would kind of like read them to each other sometimes. And, we were kids and we would laugh and goof off. And
The little like tee hee. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it seemed like super, we were just like, what is this? Like, why would you want
Right.
to read this? But so as an adult, even a young adult, I didn't ever read romance because to me, it was kind of always that silly thing that I connected with that memory from childhood. So I hadn't ever really read romance, and I had met a couple of romance authors and erotica authors, and I mean, they were nice people, but I was just like, I don't really know that I would want to read that,
Right.
Um, and so I was really surprised at how into this book I was.
I know. I loved getting your updates because
I was like
we
emotionally vested.
we would like try and figure out when we were going to record, and Kelly would email me back and say like, "Oh my gosh, I stayed up way too late last night reading more of this book." It's
It's true.
fantastic.
I would binge like 20% of the book at a time.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it was really good and well written.
I'm
I mean,
glad.
coming from someone who's not familiar with the genre and doesn't really
Right.
have anything to compare it to, I was impressed by how vested I got in the story.
That's good. And that's what you want out of anything you're reading, regardless of the genre, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's you wanna root for the characters, or you wanna know how the mystery is solved. Like you really just wanna keep
Look,
reading.
Dory was making me so fucking crazy though.
Okay, wait.
Because
Okay, don't even talk. Let me, because I have a lot to say about Dory.
okay.
First of all, her name is Dory, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let me give everyone the Amazon synopsis just so you know what we're talking about. And this again comes from Amazon. It's Calling It by Jen Doyle. Here we go. Baseball player Nathan Hawkins needs to get away from Chicago. After a near career ending car accident and with paparazzi surrounding his penthouse, Nate can only think of one place to go: home. But when he finds his old apartment occupied by a half naked woman wielding a baseball bat, he's not sure what to think, except that maybe his luck has finally changed for the better. Librarian Dorie Donelli, never thought she'd get to meet her fantasy man in person, much less while she's wearing her bathrobe. To her surprise, her nearly naked run-in with Nate leads to more unclothed encounters, but Dory is sure their fling is only temporary. As long as she remembers he'll be gone once his life gets back on track, she won't get hurt. In the meantime, she throws herself into enjoying their 3 weeks together before he has to report for spring training and go back to his old life. Oh my gosh, this is so long. For Nate, being with Dory is the only time in months that he finds himself smiling, laughing, and he has no intention of letting that go. He might even be falling in love. If only Dory would let him say the words. What they have isn't just a dream, but the start of a dream come true. Okay, as long as that synopsis is, that's like in good position to like how long the book is. Like
Yeah.
I really did enjoy it, but it was unnecessarily long.
Well, and it was what? It was 34 chapters. Like
Right.
I was surprised by that. I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, it was definitely like I'm looking at my paperback copy and it's 376 pages, which I mean, I don't think it's the longest romance novel I've ever read, but it's
Right.
definitely on the longer side. And sometimes that's okay, like, especially in like historical
Right.
fiction. I'm like, okay, you have to set the world up, let us figure out what time period is going on. This one, I mean, it's set in modern day Chicago, Inspiration, Iowa. How cute is that? And,
Right.
but yeah, so I kept thinking, like, why is this so long? That being said, I
So
enjoyed.
that Dory could drive us crazy. That's
Yeah,
why.
I think we need to start there because there is a lot that I do love about this book, and I really did enjoy reading it. But there's a good middle third of it where I wanted to punch Dory in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she was just so resistant to believing she that she could be in love with someone who was also in love with her.
Right.
And I mean, in some ways I got it, because I'm like, whatever, we all have abandonment issues or whatever. A
Sure.
lot of us. I have that I can empathize with that, but like, it wasn't like she had any baggage that would show her that
Exactly.
like relationships were never going to work. She hadn't had any relationship.
Yeah, that was like my main issue was that she is consistently trying to tell herself and tell Nate that this is just temporary. We're just having sex. Like, you're not in love with me. This isn't a relationship. And it's definitely a common trope in romance novels and films, TV shows that, somebody doesn't think they're worthy or they don't think that this person could really love them or they think the other person has bad intentions. But Nate never gave us any sort of indication that the love he was feeling for her was false. And
Right.
you're right that there's never anything about her background, about her family history, about having like previous relationships that failed, to give
Right.
us like a reason for why she would feel this way. Like it just didn't seem justified to me in any way.
And I know that part of it was that she had been basically obsessed with him as a sports fan. She'd been obsessed with him since she was, what, 12 or something.
Yeah.
There was one part where her best friend since childhood had reminded her about, like, she made her best friends put Nate Hawkins, the baseball player, on their prayer list, which I
Yes.
thought was hilarious.
That was great.
So, like, I got that. I was like, okay, she's dealing with the fact that she came face to face with her fantasy, and
Hmm.
this guy that she has adored and fawned after and lusted after since she
Right.
was a preteen. I get that. But all if without that, which is only one piece of the puzzle or reason to doubt things, she was just relentless with her, like, this is only a fling, it's not going to last, blah 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 blah, and the speeches kept coming, and I'm like,
Right.
there would be times when I'd be like, dude, this dude has you on a private jet taking you to see your family across the country.
Yeah.
Fucking accept that he loves you and
And he's
shut up.
he's jetting off to see you when he has to be like on the other side of the country the next day. Like I totally get the fantasy aspect of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet this person in real life, but
Right.
he exceeds every element of the fantasy. Like
I
it's
know.
it's not like he's a letdown from the fantasy. Like that would make sense to me if like you met this person in real life and they were like, arrogant and just like hooking up with all these other women. But that was never him. Like he was
Yeah.
so good. This was probably one of the first books I've read where I appreciated the male protagonist so much more than the female protagonist.
Yeah, I did too. And that's, I mean, not necessarily normal for me, or typical.
Me neither.
Um but yeah, I was like, shit, girl, I'm in love with him. Like,
He was so adorable. I loved
yes.
him.
I mean, small town guy, super into family. His family is very, very important to him. His community is very, very
So
important to him.
important. Mm-hmm.
He is a pillar of his community. And then he makes it in in a 1 in a million shot. He makes it as a pro baseball player, but keeps a lot, like, he's like the all-American boy, right? And then he
Yeah.
makes it, he's big time, he's famous, and he loses himself for a little while. And he has that shitty relationship with his fiance who cheats on him with his best friend, which, oh, that pisses me
I
off.
know. And is pregnant by his best friend. You're just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
And yeah, I've known people that situation has occurred in real life, and so I was
Yikes.
so heated for Nate. I was like, "Fuck that bitch."
Well, and then on top of it, he gets in a car accident with the
Yeah,
pregnant fiance. And I mean, which injures him and could be a risk to his career. But he's concerned with, even though this cheating bitch cheated on him, like, she loses the baby, and he's worried about the mother and teenage son that were in the car crash with him, even though they're at fault. Like, I mean, so many things are working against him. And
I
he is
know, and he's
such,
still a sweetheart.
oh God, he was so precious. And he just always put everyone ahead of himself. Like, oh, I
Yeah,
loved him. I loved him.
maybe that's why I had such a crush on him while I was reading the book, and I was rooting for him so hard. Also, as a woman who's 6 feet tall, I appreciate a man who's taller than me. And none of my serious relationship, like, I think I've only ever had one boyfriend who was taller than me and one who was as tall as me.
Oh my
Everyone
gosh.
else has been shorter.
See, you would do fantastic in romance novels then, because every man in romance novels has like a 12 pack and he's like 6'4".
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, 6'4". Let's do that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she was really pissing me off because I was like,
Yeah.
Dory, would you just give up the ghost?
I really liked her in a lot of other regards.
Yeah.
Like, I love that she's a librarian, and they, if nothing else, my favorite thing about the book is that it's also one of my least favorite things is there's so many characters in this book.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's so many people but at the same time, it definitely sets up the backgrounds for each of them. Like, so for Dory, she comes from Boston, which you will never forget because they remind you of every chapter of the book.
Right.
But
Right.
she's a diehard Red Sox fan. She grew up with, is it 5 or 6 brothers?
6 brothers
Yeah, 6 brothers.
in
She's
an
the only
Italian
girl.
family.
Yeah, in Boston. I mean, so she knows everything about sports and cars and history of Boston, like everything.
Yeah.
And then she moves to Iowa, which we get that adorable scene at the very end where you actually get the letter that she sent.
Yeah.
To pursue being a librarian in this town where she basically fell in love with Nate and the community when he was in high school, because he played on the dream team of like
Right.
him and his buddies playing basketball. And they just were such a foundation for that town, and it inspired her all the way in Boston.
Right, because they were such a unique team that people all over the country were watching them play.
Yeah. And I love
And
that.
and yeah, so that was definitely kind of neat how they tied it all in.
Yeah.
And I loved that she was spunky, like, because she grew up with 6 brothers, so she
Yeah.
had to be able to hold her own. So she took no shit.
Oh, for
Even
sure.
from like the rich dudes and like when
When they play poker.
yeah, when they played poker, or when she would be at meetings or the dinner with Nate and his management. I mean, she had no qualms with speaking up and giving her opinion and defending him or
Yeah.
advocating for him, even though their relationship was so new and fresh. And I loved that she did it, and I also loved that he loved that she did it, and he
Yeah.
was never like trying to hush her or
No,
like
no, he loved everything about, and she was also super passionate about, having this opportunity to revitalize this library in this town and like pay tribute to like the real people that live there. And it was nice. It was refreshing. And because I love when, just as I do in real life relationships, I love that they each had their own individualized lives and relationships with other people and friends and family. Like when it's just about the couple, I'm like, okay, but like this, what else is there? Like, so there were definitely
yeah.
obstacles working against them. And I know that there's other books that Jen Doyle has written after Calling It that I don't think she's called them a series, but that they're utilizing a lot of the characters from this book. So there's romances explored in those other books that
Okay.
we meet. I think one of them is with Nate's sister Fritz, and with
And
Matt Deke, right? That's the guy that she
yeah.
was like having something
Yeah.
going on with. Yeah, so there's definitely books that follow this that I would like maybe want to read just to kind of see what happens with some of the other characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean it really is a charming story. I love a good small town, hometown romance, like which most of the book is, although I feel like halfway through the book it kind of takes a weird turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because they had to fit in all these different elements with Chicago and Boston and
Yeah.
um
It's a lot.
and it is. And God bless Nate. He
Oh my
just
gosh.
I you know, I will say the one bone I had to pick with the book was there was a couple of sex scenes where she would say no, and then he would respond by saying like, well, you need to tell me if you really mean no, or if or if or not, or like he would be kind of a little bit aggressive with
Hmm.
her.
Hmm.
And that was that was like a borderline issue for me, because I appreciate that it fit in the book, like I get that, but with everything that is happening in the world right now, and with the
Right.
Me Too movement and all this
Right.
different, and women finally getting a voice and stuff, I didn't like seeing something written by a woman that depicted there being a blurred line. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I totally know what you're talking about. And I've read it in many other books. I didn't get it as much in this one just because it seemed like from the get-go there was like it was like him knowing like I know she loves me. I know she wants to
Right.
be with me. I know like she's saying no, not just about sex, but like she's saying no to all of this in our relationship and
Right.
I know that that's not the case. So, but I'm with you. There were definitely moments where I was like, okay, if I knew that
Right.
he didn't know that, then
Right.
I would definitely have problems.
Yeah, so that's why I say it was like a borderline bone to pick, because
Yeah.
I was a little bit, I was like, I don't know about that. But I also understood where the character was coming from.
Right. On the flip side, I love that she's like the sexual aggressor in like most scenes. Like it was really actually
Yeah.
a surprise to me because she's very outspoken, but like before they have sex, I did not picture her as being like this
No.
sexual tiger in the bedroom. Like as soon as they have sex, she is on his dick like every second of every day after that.
You are not lying. And I admired that, because I'm like, I never had that. Well, and partly because, I mean, I'm a sexual trauma survivor, so I have like weird confidence issues anyway when it comes to sex. So I was like,
Sure.
damn, like she just
Got
takes
it.
charge. Like I kind of wish I could do that. You know what I mean? Like I was like,
Yeah.
I was she was almost a role modeler or like an aspiration
Yeah.
type character for me. I was like, man, I want to be that confident, you know?
Inspiration, sexual inspiration in Inspiration, Iowa.
I know, what a funny name. Inspiration Iowa and the
Yeah.
Dream Team. So there was definitely those types of elements are the cheesy types of elements that I assumed or expected out of a romance novel. But I was really surprised at she was really able to write the plot and the characters really well so that it was fast. Like I would lose myself reading, and I was getting emotionally invested on what was happening. And like the scene where they're in Inspiration Iowa and it's the day before he's supposed to go back to training camp, and that's supposed to be their deadline for when their fling ends or whatever, and her family ends up showing up, and he can't have the big talk he wants. When they have that little like argument on the stairs and then he leaves, my heart broke. I was like, no, like I wanted them to make this work, and I wanted Dorie to pull her head out of her head.
For real. And you know what? I was actually surprised that he was willing to walk away at that point, because like throughout the story, he'd been so adamantly telling her like, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, I'm not going anywhere. And then he actually walked away when she told him to. I was like, oh, that was easier.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And then he addressed that later. He was like, she was afraid that the one thing I was going to do was leave. And then I left.
Right.
And he realizes that that's where he fucked up, basically.
Oh, boy.
And so I was like, I like that he's acknowledging it. I like that. I mean, her abandonment issues are a little bit out there for somebody who's never had a failed relationship. And she had a pretty privileged and like all American family growing up. But I'll let that slide. At least Nate is figuring it out,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm a big Nate fan. I was rooting for Nate start to finish. Dorie would have me at times and then lose me. And then in the end, I was happy that obviously there was a happy ending. So
right.
I don't know if I was thrilled with the proposal at the end. Like that was like maybe a little much for my
that was over the
taste.
top. That was over the top.
It's actually the second book we've read this month where there's a proposal at the end that's very, very big, like a very outlandish proposal, very public. And I'm just like, I didn't see this coming. Like this was not the ending that I was expecting, because I know that they're in love, but it was fast. It was very fast.
Well, it was fast, but I did expect he would propose because of how adamant he'd been the whole time about her being the one.
Right. Okay.
But I didn't necessarily expect it to be so over the top. But until
yeah, me neither.
There's that part where towards the end where Dorie is thinking to herself about how she had fantasized about this proposal at Fenway Park. But that wasn't something she discussed with him. So I'm like, am I really supposed to believe that a man read her mind?
He's just so in tune to what she needs and wants. Like nobody could see it, but I totally rolled my eyes into the back of my head.
Well, right, because I mean, even the nicest guys are kind of fucking oblivious.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I know what I mean?
It's one of those things where the proposal for me almost seemed more like, let me propose to like prove to you that I love you and that I'm willing to be with you forever. And I know that that's part of what a proposal is, and that he loves her, but it just seems like she wasn't gonna believe him or like accept his love unless it came with a proposal. Like I don't know. It was a little too much for me at the end. Like especially because the ending kind of comes, don't they mention something about how, oh, we've been talking on the phone and everything and, for like 5 weeks now. I'm like, wait, so are you together? Because like this guy is straight up proposing to you at Fenway Park now. Like I'm what? Like it surprised me at least. What did you think about some of the other characters in the book? Because there's a lot of them.
There are. And normally I would get like annoyed with having to remember that many characters, but she wrote them so well that it was easy to remember who everybody was. And I loved his sister Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved, even though like I don't think that whole backstory was necessary. Like we don't need to know that Fitz was the illegitimate child of
Right.
the second child of his estranged father or whatever. Like I don't know, that was weird to me. That didn't, unless that comes up in other books, I can't really see how it was relevant to this story.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. There were a lot of details like that.
yeah, but I loved his sister Fitz, and I loved his friends like Deke and Wash and those guys, because I loved that it did, like, in his town where he came from, nobody gave a shit that he was Nate Hawkins. He was Nate Hawkins' hometown hero, whatever, but it wasn't like the starstruck ridiculousness of like an LA or a Chicago or New York or
Well, and it wasn't just him. He was part of a team.
right. And I think that's why he liked being back there, which was another characteristic that I think I was drawn to in him, was that that team and that group of friends that were like family, that was what made everything special to him. Like he was just happy to go play baseball and make money. He was like, great, I get to play a sport that I love and make money at it. But he felt more himself when he was back home with all the people that he came up with. And I appreciated that about him.
I love the scene when they open the library finally at the end, and he's with the team and his mom, who's introducing the library and everything and introducing Dorie to the town and how they've taken her in. She mentioned something about how Nate had told her, I decided to pursue baseball, not basketball, because I played on this amazing team in high school, and there's no way that I would ever find that same camaraderie or love like if I continued playing basketball. And that's why I stopped playing and went pro with baseball instead. And I was like,
yeah,
I definitely had feelings in that scene.
I totally agree with you. I was like, oh, like, and the fact that was a surprise to his dude bros, and they didn't.
Yeah. They're like, bro, you never told me that. It was really sweet.
I mean, it really was an endearing story in a lot of different ways. So
yeah,
there was the little bit of cheesiness that I anticipated or imagined, but there was also really good writing that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I remember reading those romance novels and being like, you don't even have to be a good writer. Like, because it was back in the days of like Fabio was on all the covers and everything,
And let's be honest, that doesn't apply to just romance.
Right. But I was like, that in my head, because that had been my only experience.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't even have to be that good of a writer, but she really is, I think. I mean, she really does a good job with,
I think so
with
too.
plot and character development.
I think so too. For me, I loved the first half because we got to meet everybody. I forgot, with all her brothers. This is another thing I thought she did a good job of, is even if we never met Dorie's brothers in the book, we knew who they were. Like we really did get to meet, and they were individualized. Like they each got to name her. Like they each got to pick part of her name. So she had like 7 middle names. I thought that was hysterical and adorable.
And 2 of them were the same. 2 of them were the same. I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yaz.
It really did seem like something a big, like, Italian Catholic family would do,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those were, the first half was great to me. And then I love the ending, especially when we come in on that library scene, because I feel like it tied everything together so well. And then the stuff in the middle was fun. It was a lot of like, in rom-coms, they call it like the fun and games. Like it was a lot of fun stuff. I don't know if I necessarily needed all the stuff about them going to Chicago and then coming back and then going to Boston and then coming back. And I loved when they went to Boston because it involved her family. I really liked that, and how Nate, stood his own with her family because she did the same with his family. So I liked that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It did start getting a little choppy for me in the middle, but other than that, like you said, it was easy to kind of fall into it and read big chunks at a time because you really do fall in love with not only Nate, although mostly Nate, but a lot of the other characters. Like I was like, oh my God, I could read Nate for days. I loved him.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. And I was like, I could date Nate.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Because again, he loved that she was so independent and outspoken and gave as good as she got.
Yeah.
And I loved that he loved those things about her because I mean that's me, and my Nate, funny enough, has to
my
put up with that.
gosh, how funny. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
There was a perfect part where because I did think about it as she said it, but I was like, she's almost like, I don't like this term, but she's almost the one that like wears the pants in this relationship kind of thing. Like she seems like the more dominating personality a lot of the times. And there is that scene where she says something like, he's like, I want to treat you like my queen. And she's like, fuck that. I'm a king. Like, are you kidding me? And the fact that he was like, that's fantastic. I'm on board. I'm with it. Like, that's fine. If that's what you need, I'll be your queen. Like, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
I loved that. I thought I'd never read something like that in a story before, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever read any novel of any kind where the woman is the domineering and dominating personality in a relationship.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it. So that was one of my moments where I did like Dorie.
Yeah. And I really liked her as a person. I was just so frustrated with how unwilling she was to accept what was happening and trying to talk herself out of it.
I know.
I was like, girl, get it together. Stop trying to talk yourself out of being happy. Why do we do that to ourselves?
I know. Like, how many times does this incredible man who clearly has fallen in love with you after like 2 days need to prove himself to you? Like, what else does he need to do?
Right. Yeah.
That being said, I did like her. I thought she'd be fun to hang out with. She clearly is the person to have on your trivia team when you go to trivia night, because she dominates trivia night in Inspiration, Iowa.
I know. That was a really good scene. That was a lot of fun.
It was fun. Although I was like, this is the hardest fucking trivia night I've ever seen in my life. Like, these questions.
Well, because they came up with them on their own. So that's a twist too. Like normally trivia night, the bar comes up with the questions, but in this town, it was always the same guys against the same girls, and they submitted questions for each team,
right,
to challenge each other. So I was like, well, that's really interesting. And I mean, it was a smart way to develop the plot because that was kind of how Nate figured out that Dorie knew who he was.
Yeah. And that was something that I don't know. It wasn't my favorite storyline because it lasts a long time, like for the first like third of the book, where he thinks that she doesn't know who he is. And then when he finds out, she's like, oh my God, this is going to be it. Like, this is going to be, he's never going to talk to me again. And I've seen that trope used usually as like the full story arc before with people in romance novels. And it was one that played out here because I was like, oh, well, we're only like 100 pages in. Obviously, this isn't going to be the fight that they have to end the book.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't know if that was like a normal or typical plot line, but I did think it was kind of weird. And I was like, I was also like, wait, he lied to her about who he was when they first met. So
Right.
why should it be an issue that she pretended not to know who he was? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
They made it
I don't
seem
know.
like
That
it was
was,
going to be such a big deal. And I was like, I don't understand why. Like, I know that he's trying to get away, but it's like, look around, look at this town. Even if she didn't know who he was, she could ask anybody. And like, everybody knows
yeah.
him. Like, I don't know. Like, I get the whole idea of the celebrity just wanting to be loved for themselves, but I don't know. It seemed like an unnecessary addition.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Before we continue with the raunchiest bit, let me take a few seconds to tell you about my favorite new podcast listening app, Podcoin. Podcoin is the app that pays you to listen to this podcast and all your other favorites. Just get the Podcoin app on iPhone or Android. It's free, super easy to use, and you can use the Podcoins you earn to claim gift cards or donate to charity. Check out the Podcoin app and use the invite code BoobsNoobs to earn 300 Podcoins just for signing up. And now, back to the boobylicious content. What did you think of the explicit content in the book?
I mean, some of it seemed gratuitous to me. Like, I was like there were back-to-back sex scenes.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's typical of romance novels either, since this is all a whole new world to me.
Right.
But I was like, really? Like 10 scenes in a row are different types of sex scenes.
No, you're right.
And I was just like,
it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that it was too many for me, but I'm with you in that I thought it was too many all smushed together, like in the same section of the book.
Yeah, because you go through the whole first 2/3 of the book and they're having sex like every 5 minutes. And then there's the whole last third of the book where they're separated more. There's more time between them and they're talking on the phone. They're not seeing each other in person. To me, that was when they finally started to really get to know each other, was when they weren't in the same room, so they couldn't have sex every 5 seconds, because Dorie seemed to use sex as a way to distract him from his feelings or talking about his feelings. And that was probably part of what annoyed me too about that piece of her character, was I was like, dude, can you talk about anything besides giving him a blowjob?
I know. It would just be like anytime he wanted to have any sort of conversation, because he was the one to always initiate a conversation. She would just be like, my knees are fine. Drop.
Right.
Pull out that dick. Like, I mean, it just every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a lot. I did appreciate what was in them, but it was a lot.
Yeah, no, she wrote the scenes well. I mean, but it was just that having all the ones smushed into one chunk all together seemed like, I mean, are you just being lazy now?
Like, oh, we got to the sex, so now they just have to keep on doing it.
Right. That's how it felt a little bit sometimes. But no, I think she wrote them really well.
Yeah. No, I agree. Did you have a favorite specific scene?
Maybe the shower scene towards the end of their like deadline time together. That was a powerful scene.
Okay.
And again, I think what appealed to me about a lot of the sex scenes, and probably that one in particular, is again because I'm 6 feet tall and I'm not a small girl. So the idea of having a man who's strong enough and tall enough to lift me up over him, you know what I mean? Like, that was sexy to me.
I agree. There's a very specific scene that stood out to me because it involves him not only binding her wrists, but binding them to a chin-up bar, which I just was like, I don't think I've seen that before.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because he's an athlete that he would have a chin-up bar, but I also didn't see that coming.
I know. And I was like, okay. And she was wearing her heels, so she was tall enough to like kind of reach it and not be, just like hanging off of her hands.
Yeah, because no, fuck
But
that.
yeah.
You don't get to break my spine so we can have sex.
No. But it was also like the one time I feel like he was the much more dominating personality,
Yeah.
like in the bedroom. Like he like ties her wrists with I think whatever top she was wearing and like pulls it up to the chin up bar. I was like, whoa, did not see this coming. Like, okay.
Well, and he talked about that too. So his character was like he finally took control and she finally let control go and let him kind of have his way with her. And that was one of those turning points in their relationship where she had started to let her guard down.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Actually, that was something that I found interesting too, was that she won't let him go down on her for like a good chunk of the book. And I thought that was interesting too, was she like the first time they hook up, she's like, that's too intimate for me. Like, I'm not doing that. And then it happened a few more times until it got to the point where he was like, I want all of you tonight. Like, I want to kiss and touch all of you. And that was nice.
So it reminded me of like when I lost my virginity, it was to my first love and I was only 14 years old. And I remember the first time that he wanted to give me oral and he asked if it would be okay with me. No man since has ever asked. And I have always thought to myself that I appreciated that he always asked before we did anything, like to make sure that I was always comfortable. And I wish more men did that, especially since I ended up being a sexual trauma survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like it if I tell you not to do something and you keep trying to do it. That's triggering for me. So I liked that there was an element of like, she could still put up boundaries if she wanted to.
Yeah.
And he respected those boundaries. But then finally basically said, I want all of you or we're going to stop right now, And so he still gave her a choice, but he was like, this is getting ridiculous. You're keeping your guard up too much. I want all of you or we're going to stop. And I kind of appreciated that too, that scene.
Yeah.
Because it is intimate. It is a very intimate form of sexual contact. And I mean, as a person with that background that I have, there are times I don't want that. I'm like, I shy away from that level of intimacy too.
Well, and usually in movies and books, it's treated as kind of like a precursor to sex. Like it's,
right.
Well, we have to go these steps, we do first base, second base, third base, and then home run sort of thing. And it was refreshing to see a different, order of events, I guess. And just that, there were boundaries and obviously he wanted to break down some of hers. He didn't really seem to have any boundaries. He was like all in from the very beginning.
No, he was like hard on his sleeve from the word jump. I mean, it was really pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That's not a typical male character in rom-coms, straight up romance movies. I think most novels, I mean, really, that's very atypical.
Yeah.
And that's probably why we had a crush on Nate Hawkins.
Right. Is because usually we see like they start off as like the bad boy or the womanizer, and then they learn from her and she makes them better. And, and I'm like, he made her better, if anything, in this story.
Yeah.
Like, what a role reversal.
It really was.
I really liked it. I really liked it for that.
I did too. I liked that too. Yeah, it really was a role reversal, and thank God, because can we please stop depicting women as these demure little flowers that need to be watered by men?
Right. No watering. We're the kings. We're the kings.
I liked it.
I'm going to give everybody a brief excerpt here from my favorite scene, which is the chin-up bar scene, just so everyone has a little idea of what we're working with here. He bent down to help her step out of them, his hand closing around one ankle as he gently lifted her foot up, then the other. Guess you'll have to see, he said, humming against the inside of her thigh as he spoke. And then he was pulling her up to him, his hands molding over her hips as though her body was a chalice and he was dying of thirst. The stubble of his chin was rough against her as his tongue lashed over her clit. She lost her footing entirely, trembling and twisting with need. His tongue and teeth and, oh God, fingers were teasing and tempting her, bringing tears to her eyes as she ached for, began to plead for release. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, she's really good she really is a good writer.
Yeah, it's good. I feel like when I read a good sex scene, it almost feels like it's like reading like good poetry or like hearing like a spoken word, like those words like tempting, tantalizing. I'm like, there's definitely like a rhythm to it for sure.
Yeah, I would agree.
Did you have something you wanted to read?
I don't know. I highlighted a bunch of different stuff, but it was mostly like it was kind of mostly stuff where I wanted to remind myself, and I was kind of like, what is happening with this girl? Why is she acting so averse to this? But the DB, when they first meet and she grabs the bat and he's like, that's my bat, and it says from DB on it, and it was like connected to the inside joke with him and his sister Fitz, who had started calling him douchebag because of the way that Fame was treating him.
Right.
So I liked that. I liked when him and Fitz were on the phone and she was like, what the hell are you doing here? I mean, the women in this book had really strong characters. So Fitz was one of my favorite too. His sisters were all, and her sister-in-laws. I mean, that was like, I don't know if I have any particular excerpt that I would want to read. I kind of forgot to pick one out, but I think my favorite thing about the book, now that I'm thinking about it and we're talking about it, is that all of the women in the book are really strong characters.
Yeah.
Her sister-in-laws totally run her brothers.
Oh yeah.
Sexually and otherwise. I mean,
and there's so many different types of relationships in the story too. Like there's her brothers, her sister-in-laws. I think there's some kids too, right? She has some nieces and nephews, and even they get to talk. Like they get to, be present in the story, and he's got his family and the weird addition of Fitz to his family that I honestly, when I was reading it, I don't even think I caught it in the beginning that she came from another marriage. And so it came up later. I was like, wait, what's going on?
Well, and then at the very end, they throw out of nowhere, that not only is she from a different marriage, but he apparently thought his dad was like dead.
Yeah.
And then finds out in adolescence that his dad not only is alive, but lives 3 towns over with another
family. Yeah. And there was something in that same page. It was literally like a page of him being like, yeah. And there was like a time where they were in the basement and thought like the house was burning down or like in a hurricane or something.
The whole town was it a large fire or a tornado or something?
Something.
That took out the town. But it's mentioned in the beginning because they're talking about the foundation that he and the other guys in the dream team started to kind of like fund the town and keep the town running and contribute to local projects.
And that's why she's there for the library.
But it was such an inconsequential mentioning in the beginning of the book that by the time we got to the end of the book, I was like, wait, why was he watching his house burn down around him?
Yeah. And that definitely kind of was part of like my problem with like some of the choppiness in the book was there would be certain pages where things would just be mentioned like offhand. And I'm like, wait, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Like is that something I missed? And so it's already a long enough book. I don't want to have to flip back to like try and remember things that have happened. This isn't Game of Thrones. Like that's not what I should be doing with a romance novel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. And I was the same way because I was reading it on a Kindle. So I was like, I am not swiping 300 pages.
There's no way. There's no way. You just highlight it and say fire and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh. Okay, cool. Well, any last thoughts about the book before I ask you to give it a few grades?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything. And I did put it in my Goodreads bookshelf and everything too. I'm officially a Goodreads author now. So
yes.
So like people can connect with me in that way too. And you can see what books I'm reading and, you know, reviews I write for books and stuff. So I put it in my Goodreads and I still have to write out a review for it, but I think we pretty much covered everything. I mean, overall, I enjoyed reading the book. It sucked me in.
Same.
So
it's definitely one of those ones where like I wouldn't be shocked if they did make like a Hallmark TV movie out of it. Like I've seen there's definitely books I've read where they have adapted that cute small town thing for Hallmark movies. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course, this could be Inspiration Iowa. Like, why not? You know? So I'm with you. Okay. So then I'm going to ask you to give the book 3 grades. We're going to grade for story, syntax, and sexcapades. And it's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be.
Okay.
So let's start with story. What would you give it out of 10?
I'd say probably a 7 out of 10.
Okay. That's what I did too. I gave it a 7.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I honestly gave it 7s across the board. Like that was kind of like, you know, just sort of where it landed for me. Like it was overall a little too long. There were things that I was like I said before, a little choppy where I don't know if it was me that missed it or what, you know, what it was, but for me, Dorie was like the thing that brought down my grades like throughout.
Yeah. I would say syntax. I mean, I might go 7s across the board too, because it's the same thing. Like the story was really good, but it went longer than it needed to. There was some choppiness. There was some weird details included that didn't contribute to the main plot line. And so it kind of like, it would almost knock you out of the book for a second. 'Cause you'd be like, wait a minute, what? And so I didn't like that. So I would probably say the same. And then, I loved Nate through the whole book. Like I was sad and disappointed when he walked away, but I knew he'd probably go back. But like the poor man, you can only do so much. You can only try so hard for so many times. Like, I mean, he was putting himself out there so vulnerably, and she just kept kicking him in the balls, literally.
For real. I mean, he was all in. Literally. I mean, that's literally the very final page of the book. After they've gotten engaged, is she knees him in the balls.
Which that was like, what? Why the fuck? Like, that had been a running joke through the whole book and whatever, but like, why? He just proposed in Fenway Stadium. There was literally no reason for that.
From an author's standpoint, I'm like, it's like a plant payoff kind of thing, but we didn't need it. We didn't need it to be paid off. Like, he's amazing. Stop kneeing him in the balls.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
How about the sexcapades, with which we both agreed were maybe a little too concentrated in one section of the book?
Yeah, I would say 6 or 7 just for that reason, because she wrote them well. They were just all smushed together, so many of them. The majority of them were in a very small chunk of the book. And
exactly.
So that was my main issue with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. 7s across the board from me. So I think we're on the same page. I mean, that being said, I would definitely recommend this to somebody. I think this is the first Jen Doyle book I've read. So I would be interested to see what else she's written in the last 3 years and having gotten to know some of the characters in Calling It, I would definitely want to read the romance with Fitz. Like, I really liked Fitz's character. She's the one that I would want to see more of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I noticed when I got to the end of the book that it said there was the next one in the series was available for like $4.99 on ebook. So I was like, well, maybe I'll grab that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I might check out Fitz and we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so that's all I've got for you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on and letting me be a part of your world for a morning.
Oh my gosh, ditto. I'm so excited that the Kellys got together and
I
made this
know. We
happen.
made some magic happen today. So thank you so
Always.
much. And
Thank you.
you might have brought a whole new genre into my life long term,
And
honestly.
that's all I'm trying to do in life. So, I mean, as long as I can get more romance converts out there, I'll know that I've made my contribution to society.
Nice. Nice.